Us is the second feature film from Jordan Peele, who was primarily known for his sketches with Keegan-Michael Key on the Key and Peele show back in the day, but now he has transformed himself into a new public image, that of a horror director. When Get Out came out in 2017, that was a huge surprise for everybody in terms of how it was able to mix elements of comedy, horror, and social satire into something that was just pretty much a masterpiece for a filmmaking debut. And given that Us is also a horror film, although much more of an overt one than Get Out was, I was definitely excited. And in this story, we follow a family of 4 on their vacation to California, particularly the beach of Santa Cruz. They're staying in a beach house that's close to where Santa Cruz is. But one day when they're staying at their house, this doppelganger family shows up on their doorstep, in which every single one of those people in that family looks pretty much identical to each and every one of them. And out of this situation comes a horrifying set of events that includes violence, intrigue, and a mystery that I won't divulge to anybody because I think there's a lot of satisfaction to be had in witnessing this story play out. Because yes, Us is a very good film. I'm so happy that Jordan Peele is shaping up to be one of the best horror directors of our day. And for anyone who disagrees with me on this point, you might as well get out. Anyone who watches this movie and may be disappointed for a number of reasons, one of them being that it may not be as good as Get Out, that it's more of an overt horror film than Get Out was, or that it's just perhaps not as satisfying of an overall experience, I understand those points. After getting as good of a debut from Jordan Peele as Get Out was, you would expect his future films to be at least just that good or even better. But I think that's unfair to someone who just had such a lightning in a bottle success for their first movie. Not every single one of their films is gonna be perfect. Get Out wasn't perfect anyway, but my point is, people are prone to make mistakes and they will make flaws in their art. And Us definitely has a lot of problems with it, the likes of which I will get into later. But the criticism that has been levied against Us by some of the people who are just disappointed on a very surface level, I think should be taken with a grain of salt, because this is one of those films that definitely has clunky elements to it, but the more that you think about it, and the more that certainly I thought about it and how it all makes sense in terms of a story, but also a grander commentary on the society we live in, I think it's a work of genius. First of all, it has to be said that this film, it looks gorgeous, guys. I have no idea how Jordan Peele has developed such an eye for the camera in only his second film, but his capabilities behind the camera in terms of framing shots, editing things together, and just creating a flow of how this movie moves from one scene to the next is astounding. I hate horror films that have such a cheap look and they look like they were just thrown together with very little money and very little effort to basically just get this product out so that teenagers can go watch it and make a quick buck. Us was made by someone who had a vision for what he wanted to accomplish. You can watch this movie, and sure, you might not be necessarily scared, depending on what you get scared by, but you can't deny that Jordan Peele knows what he's doing. It looks absolutely incredible. Color grading is astounding, and I think the way that he's able to utilize light in this movie in particular is very important. I don't necessarily know what it means in terms of his themes yet. I'll have to see the movie again to delve into that more. But just in terms of setting a mood, this film is absolutely perfect, especially in its opening sequence that just sent shivers down my spine with how it's able to build tension and horror without resulting to cheap shock tactics or even really doing anything that's pop-out scary. It's just suspenseful. And I love how this film used that approach. It builds tension. It allows you to just be weary of what you're watching. And you feel the same feelings that the main characters do, because you don't know much about what they're experiencing, same as they do. And as you learn more and you become more invested in their experience, yes, you're scared and you feel the intensity of it all. As they get more excited and more into what they're doing, you do as well. And I love this film for that. It understands how genre films work, and horror especially, because as the tension ramps up and it gets even more intense, you're able to feel that same intensity because the characters feel it. Thankfully, Jordan Peele just doesn't use situations to build his characters. There actually are a lot of good character building moments, especially since each and every normal person, if you want to call it that, is matched very well with their doppelganger, and the way that each character has their dynamic between the two versions of themselves is clever. It preys on specific characteristics of each person, and they allow both sides to build, to grow, and to lead to some very shocking and very satisfying moments to witness on screen. And of those characters that receive the strongest development, it's undoubtedly Lupita Nyong'o's. My goodness, what an actress. You know, people have said this, and I'm going to say it again. Award shows don't give enough credit and enough clout to horror movies, especially the performances in them. If that wasn't already evidenced in the fact that Toni Collette was completely snubbed by the Golden Globes and the Academy Awards for her performance in Hereditary last year, my prediction is that this will happen again with Lupita Nyong'o and Us, because she delivers an absolutely awards-worthy performance in this film. Possibly the best that I've seen from her since 12 Years a Slave, which she did win an Oscar for. And the reason why that's the case is because she has to balance so many emotions and so many underlying trauma and fear that is in both the doppelganger version of her character and the normal version. Sorry, I keep using the quote signs, I don't know why. It's clear to see that she was able to envision what both versions of the character are like through Jordan Peele's script, and she made them completely her own. The arc that her character, I guess both sides of her character, goes through, it makes for some very compelling drama, intense scares, and sequences that'll just take your breath away, especially in a sequence towards the very end that has issues, which I'll get into, but has similarities to what made Annihilation's ending so frightening. Anyone who's seen Annihilation and this film will know what I'm talking about, hopefully, both for what takes place and how it ultimately concludes. Now, before I get into some of my final points, I do want to bring up some issues that I do have. After the first half is over, much of the tension that was built does kind of deflate. Not only because you start to learn answers as to what's going on and you get more clarity as to where the story ultimately is going. A lot of the suspense that's built in the first act is kind of built towards the doppelganger family meeting up with the regular characters. And once all of that happens, yes, it's still scary and it's still intense and entertaining, but some of that does get deflated once the crap hits the fan. But it undeniably does feel less tense and scary once a lot of crazy things start happening. Another reason why some of that tension is deflated too is because of some choices with the humor that were made. Generally, I think the humor in this movie works because Jordan Peele has proven with Get Out and now this movie that he can balance those two tones very well. There are some jokes that don't come off very well. One of them being this scene in which there's just such a dark, dreary, and violent mood that's being built up. And all of it is basically just dropped when Winston Duke's character says something that comments on the whole situation. There is definitely some self-awareness to it, but for me, the release that came from that joke didn't really pay off. However, I will say that Winston Duke, who some of you may remember from Black Panther, does a very good job in this movie. Not only does he do well with the horror sequences, both for his physicality and the sheer force that he brings into those scenes, but because he is able to handle the comedy very well. And I almost wonder if Jordan Peele saw himself through that character. It would make sense to me, and his character works well, generally. Otherwise, there are a lot of things that you can look at in this movie and nitpick, but there are certain sequences that when you think about what's happening in relation to other things that happened earlier, they don't necessarily make sense. And then there's the ending, which personally, I loved. When I saw the movie originally, I had some questions, but then all of it just came together as I thought about it more and I made my own conclusions. But there are problems with the ending that people will definitely take away from. The fact that it is so polarizing, it'll definitely make some not like the movie as much as a whole. But also there is a significant amount of exposition and flashbacks that take place here to kind of recontextualize what you've seen already. It kind of dips the pacing a little bit, and not all of the answers that are given in that scene are exactly satisfying. But otherwise, this whole entire film is great. It's filmed extremely well. The performances, especially Lupita Nyong'o, are excellent. And the story, I feel, is satisfying and provides for a lot of great humor, horror, and entertaining ways at looking at society as it is today. And I also have to mention that the musical score is absolutely incredible. Just with the mood that it helps establish with the actual filmmaking. It's a huge compliment to any composer who's able to make a musical score that I want to go back and listen to separate from the movie. Overall, I do think Get Out is a better movie in retrospect. But Us is its own beast, one that succeeds very well at what it does. And it's encouraging to me that it had such a strong box office debut. And I hope more people go to see it because it's the kind of horror film we need. Something that's original, of a vision from a director who clearly knew what he was doing, and it presents interesting ideas. So with that, I'm going to give Us an A-. As far as an age recommendation goes, there is a considerable amount of violence in this movie, some of which is off-screen, some of it is shot from a distance from where the camera is, but there is a considerable amount of blood that you do see, both from stabbings, from people getting slashed open, or various other types of wounds that are caused by scissors and blades and other things. So if you don't like seeing blood on screen, that's something to definitely consider before watching this movie. As well as a considerable amount of adult language too. A lot of it which does come from an NWA song that is used in the second act. There's nothing really related to drugs or sex, but if you don't like violence or profanity, I would say stay away from this film. And overall, I would say this is best for people who are ages 15 and up. Thanks again for watching this review. Look forward to more content, hopefully coming this week, one of them being Star Wars related. Exciting. Feel free to check out my Facebook and Letterboxd pages in the description below, and also please follow me on Instagram. I'm starting to do a lot more stuff on there as well. And thank you for watching, guys. Have a good one.